Okay, everyone, this is from Reddit, from the Troubled Teens thread 4 years ago, so 2021. Did members of Scientology go on to create Elon-esque torture facilities for troubled teens? I think it was the other way around, my opinion. It seems to me that the tactics used in Scientology, see going clear, are almost directly related to the tactics used in these troubled teens cults. The screaming, the isolation, the ceremonial beatings used to cause emotional trauma. The sabotaging of one another at all costs. The rules which are impossible to follow, the constant meetings, the constant cleaning, that's part of the mind control, the filth, the absolute Stanford experiment-esque vibes in general. They're putting the dots together. Has there been a direct link correlated before? Thanks in advance. I am very curious to know. Deleted says, Scientology is one of many cults that popped up in California in the 1950s. Synanon is also from that era. Scientology also have their own drug rehabilitation program called Narconon. The founder of Elon's school was a Synanon patient. It's a big conspiracy rabbit hole to go down. Caveman says, definitely. I am just so curious if Synanon, etc., could have potentially literally spawned from Scientology members in some way. It's not the members creating this, you guys. Just saying. Maybe some sort of joint effort to spread this ploy of psychological abuse, power, and exploitation of people for millions. Kind of sounds like a pyramid, doesn't it? Brisket and Bean says, it didn't. There's a podcast about Synanon on Behind the Bastards. You should check it out. If you start Googling Synanon, Troubled Teen, Scientology, looking for connections, it sends you down conspiracy theory rabbit holes. Wobbly. Wabagong. Yes. I think they are similar simply because they spawned in the same area at the same time. That's a hint. They were both widely influenced by the culture around them at the time and the changes in how we treat psychiatric illness. It seems like it falls in line with the cultural pushback of that era as well. From what I remember from introductory psych classes, the 50s and 60s were a tumultuous time in psychiatry. At least in the United States, there was a big push away from institutionalization and traditional theories like psychoanalysis, Freudian beliefs, were falling in popularity. There was a lot of innovation and discovery, but there was also little oversight from ethics boards. Do you guys wonder why that would be? And for a while, they straight up didn't exist. So it was kind of a free-for-all. All the famous highly unethical experiments, like the Stanford prison experiment and Milgram's obedience experiment, all happened during this time. Those aren't the only ones. This was also a time that people suffering from psychiatric illness were treated as subhuman, being given little rights and occasionally being experimented on and sterilized against their will. The timing could not have been more perfect for cults like Synanon and Scientology to pop up, in my opinion. I personally believe the broad support for Synanon early on of further evidence. Deleted says, hello fellow BTB fan. Avalon Faith. It's not even conspiracy at this point, facts. Straight facts. All of these use the same model, facts. But Hubbard's came from a different source, I believe, including other cults and Crowley. Also, the Latino, if delusions that stimulants bring. I don't understand what that means. Also, the Latino, if delusions that stimulants bring. I don't understand what that meant. Probably a misspell on accident. It's a dark and looming rabbit hole. MLPR 34 Klopper. I seem to remember some of the Synanon folks had formerly been in Scientology. Not Dietrich, but some of his lieutenants. Huh. Nice German name. Interesting. I'll see if I can find a link. Really, though, these are techniques common to all cults. You guys wonder why that is, right? I'm a body online. Is there a way to find out certain program ties to Synanon? The loneliest number 7. This is what inspired many of the troubled teen industries, if that helps. I'm going to click on it and hopefully I can get back. The cult that spawned the tough love teen industry. Caveman 707, thank you. I feel like there just has to be a connection between Scientology and Synanon. The loneliest number 7, no problem. I also agree with you. Avalon Faith. I'm not sure there's an actual direct link, as Hubbard was a raging addict. They're all linked in their high control mind, molding punitive measures, though. I would say do a little more research. MLPR 34 Klopper responds, Hubbard was a raging addict, which is hilarious since Scientology is very anti-drug. There's that word, that little prefix again, that anti. Where have we heard that before, you guys? Huh? Even aspirin is not allowed. Only drugs approved in Hubbard's writings, which is even funnier since choral hydrate, a major depressant, is approved by the tech. I seem to remember reading he had several psychiatric drugs in his system when he died. He did. These are forbidden in Scientology. Typical cult leader. The rules are for everyone else. What do people say? The rules are for thee. How do they say that? The rules are for thee, but not, I forget. I bet a lot of you guys know what I'm saying. Okay, so Avalon faces, you know it. The whole thing is just beyond. The fact that it is very out there info, it is seriously insane that it is still growing, if empty buildings count as growing. Avalon Faith. So I'm a little obsessed with Scientology, but am not nor have been a member, believer, or even stepped foot in a building. Don't they call Justin Bieber's fans believers? Interesting. TonyOrtega.org has wonderful and daily news, interviews, and info, which I've been reading for years. As far as I can remember, they kind of do and kind of don't. There are boarding schools, and there was the teens sent to the boat, free ones. They did do all this crap you spoke up, but it was not exactly a troubled teen situation. It's generally, and I would go as far to say mostly, a thing about the parents being super devout, just say indoctrinated when you see that word, and sending their children away because of that. So their children can rise in status in the group, cult, religion. I actually happen to know a lady that ran one. She ended up being kicked out of the cult, and I have not seen her since. My job puts me in line with more and an average amount of Scientologists, strangely. That's how I became a little obsessed, because things are off for sure. I wish I could remember the name of it. There are a couple, I believe, and they have the same name. I'm sure it's an easy Google. Anyway, they believe that children are not children. They are tiny adults. So they are treated as such from an early age while they remember their past lives. In such, there is guidance toward the group, cult, but they are expected and live by pretty much the same standards as adults. So all the things you've heard of happening to of age X followers are also happening to the children. Wobbly Wobblegong. Wasn't the children are tiny adults belief also very common during the Victorian era in much of England? Oh, that's a really interesting point. And the West as well. That's true. I remember hearing something about that influencing the abysmal lack of rights children had at the time. Also doing research on facilities. I always stumble on CCHR, which is apparently run by the Church of Scientology. They're very anti-psychiatry, but like how do they have basically the same type of institutions? Like watching just some documentaries on the weird stuff they make their members do reminded me very much of some of the Synanon's practices. Yeah, and isn't it interesting that Keith Raniere employed a lot of the Scientology tactics? That's all I'm going to say. Avalon Faith. Ooh, my CCHR is a whole other thing. Yes, it is Scientology through and through. Very much like Synanon. Truly at the heart, they are all the same. Facts. Wobbly Wobblegong. It makes me mad because they get reports of actual issues and I'm like, oh great, I found something. And then I will be royally pissed when I see it's from them. If they find something substantial, I have to do extra searching to make sure they aren't misrepresenting information because of their ulterior motives. They also tend to just cite themselves. Yeah, they do. I've noticed that. So there's no link to the true source of information, and I've got to really dig to find it. Avalon Faith says, I can only imagine. And if the source is a study of 3 people, what do you do with that? Then even finding a source that isn't Scientology, are they reputable, etc.? I don't envy you. Facts. Zillow the God. Moderator Demetrius. Synanon was definitely the main impetus for the TTI, but it wouldn't surprise me if some Scientology or dual Scientology Synanon members set up similar programs. As for direct connections offhand, Synanon founder Charles Dietrich gave a speech stating he wanted to organize Scientology. The Sikhs, the United Farm Workers, and the Unification Church giving them all space in their Washington embassy. Not a real embassy, just what they called it. Once Synanon got caught up in lawsuits, minutes came out indicating the Church of Scientology had visited Synanon and given Synanon counseling on how to deal with people who are critical of reorganization. But on deposition, Charles Dietrich stated he couldn't remember those events. You know, mind control, I can't talk. Mind control does that as well. You lose memory. Not to say he was, but I'm just saying. Those connections both directly come from Miracle to Madness, the book written by opposing legal counsel. The former is, I think, around page 470-ish. The latter may be 560 to 590. It is a 640-page paperback behemoth with no digital searchable version. So you'll have to do additional legwork yourself. It just so happens one of my own lawsuits relies heavily on it, so I ended up committing a fair bit to memory. Hope this helps. Halder Estrup says, there have been reports of abuse taking place at their department in Copenhagen. It seems that they run a kind of punishment unit inside the Danish chapter. Authorities in Europe monitor them. Oh, this is interesting, you guys. I gotta click on this. Brainwashing in Scientology's Rehabilitation Project Force. Scientology policy enabled years of child sexual abuse, lawsuit says. Tampa Bay Times. I got mixed feelings about Tampa Bay Times, but sometimes they publish some reasonable things. I'm sure I've read this as well. Looking for Sea Org victims. I think this might be from Mike Rinder. Let's see. Yeah. I don't, you guys know how I feel. Oh my God, Cluck. In 1987, some members of Scientology created the Mace Kingsley Ranch School. I believe it's still open. Though not specifically for teens, since children as young as 8 were sent there. Although it was mostly for children of Scientology staff who were hanging around the orgs, no, they were working. Their parents worked at causing PR issues with their behavior. The ranch got a reputation outside Scientology as somewhere to send troubled teens. A quote from that link. I'll be honest with you guys. There's quite a few different ranches, and sometimes it gets a little confusing for me. In an interview in 2009 with the Phoenix New Times, regarding his time at the school, Charlie Brand of the Miniature Tiger said, "It was bizarre because my family's not Scientologists. My parents thought it was for troubled teens." There's a 6-part video interview series with Nathan Rich, who was a child of Scientologists and a student there. Well worth viewing. Okay, so that was the one that Nathan Rich talks about. He calls it the lower ranch. He was at the lower version, which I think that was for lower conditions. Wiki Summarizer Bot. Mace Kingsley Ranch School. They're still recruiting children. Isn't that wonderful? Mace Kingsley Ranch School, later called the Ranch School, Incorporated. That's a really great way to, what is it called? Like, you know when you change names and you can get out of certain type of legal issues or... Okay, Mace Kingsley Ranch School, later called the Ranch School Incorporated, and the New Mexico Ranch School, was a Church of Scientology affiliated ranch school for children aged 8 to 17, set in a rural environment. The school opened in 1987 and was initially based in Palmdale, California, before moving to a property in the Gila Wilderness, New Mexico. Of course, it was extremely remote. They always are. It was eventually closed in 2002, and its certificate of incorporation was revoked. Okay, I stand corrected. The school's curriculum focused heavily on the teachings of Scientology. Avalon Faith. Delphi, I believe, is the name of the boarding schools. You guys, was Apple School the same as Delphi? See how they like to change the names? Gorelord 2204. You know, that was my very first thought when I learned about this, which was only tonight. I can't believe it. My God, it's pure evil. It sure is. Uni Subni. Did you ever get a meaningful answer to this? Looking at EST, Lifespring, and other squirrel programs that came out of Scientology, they are also Synanon methods. They don't really connect to Al-Anon. The guys in Pasadena with Parsons had little to no direct contact with Crowley. And Thelema was a religion for inadequate male egos based on a mix of places. That's subjective. It didn't have any aspect of the tech or coercive and control methods used in all these wellness and human potential movements. No offense to this person, but how much research have you done? Saying they are just connected isn't really helpful, because there's a profit model here to exploit people that has damaged lives. It's worth tracing how LRH found this stuff. You ain't never going to find that for real. It wasn't a lieutenant, because Hubbard controlled everything in heaps and heads of documents. So just stop cold like that, you guys. I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.